everyone. Nice to meet you. As Martin kindly introduced, my name's Katherine Jones. I'm the head of PMO at United Utilities, and we at United Utilities are a member of the Project Data Analytics Coalition. And my job at the start of this presentation is a little bit to tell you about what that Data Analytics Coalition is, and I suppose to tell you why we in United Utilities joined it and what we think we can deliver together as a coalition. So overall, the coalition is a number of different industry leading, I would say, organisations that are wanting to work together because we're all seeing something in this topic around project data analytics and the potential for what that will bring in the future and how we could potentially use that to improve how we look at project delivery. And what, I guess, as a collective, we've realised that the answer to the challenge around how can project data analytics change how we do project management probably isn't going to be solved in an individual basis and one organisation at a time. And actually, by coming together, we will do it quicker. And we will be able to work across organisations, whether we're all across different sectors, we can share that knowledge, and with our supply chain. By being a coalition and a critical mass, we'll really be able to help speed this process up. So that's a little bit about the why. And what we're saying is by what we're recognising in project data analytics world, it's moving fast and no one person can have all the answers. And I'm certainly, every time I connect with this coalition, with Martin and his team, I learn a little bit more around project data analytics, around AI, and what that art is. And so first of all, it's a great forum for us all to understand. What we're all recognising is that actually this is predicting to really disrupt and change the way our organisations deliver projects, and the predictions that you see on the screen here is just suggesting some of that. It's going to change the future of what we deliver and change the makeup of our teams and the skills that we need. So we're really looking to kind of reimagine the profession together. So we want to work together as a team where we each take a bit of the problem statement, solve it within our organisations, but actually share that across all the organisations to move it quicker, so rather than work individually. So what we're doing is a coalition. We've picked 3 topics that we said, well, let's try this out on risk management, assurance, scheduling. Let's reimagine how they might work and then use a collective to bring some actual case studies to try some of these problem statements and turn them into actual real life problems in our organisations, and then use things like the Data Analytics Apprenticeship team members, things like hackathons, to come up with the solutions, to test them. Really importantly for us, to build the benefit case, to build the case that says this data analytics solution, this AI implementation helps us to release capacity. Here's the business case that shows that. So really some tangible case studies and examples that we can point to help build that momentum both within our own organisations and across the industry. So that's what we're trying to do. We're taking a couple of topics. We're going to work through them to say, well, have we got some specific examples of data that we can use and do it? And we're calling them Lego blocks that come together. And if we all put these Lego blocks together, as I say, as a collective, we'll work faster, to the old Henry Ford quote that we can see there. I appreciate we're running through these slides quite a bit. What we'll do is actually make these slides available because in slower time you can read and digest. We've pulled them together as a bit of the story as to what we've come together as a coalition. But what we wanted to do is actually just to follow that thread through and show you how we're going to take an example such as how do we reimagine risk management and how might we apply that as a coalition and back into our organisations.
Next slide, please, Ant.
Just a couple of things here in terms of, what is feeding our coalition. Where did this all start? There's a couple of other groups that have been working on this topic overall. Project Data Analytics Task Force particularly has been leading in kind of setting a policy and direction across the industry on project data analytics. APM have been, and Major Projects Association have been kind of really part of the vision and saying how this is going to change the future. And obviously, Martin and the team have very much been helping us to imagine what that might look like. And that has really brought it into the next steps. Well, okay, we can see this as a future, we can see the next steps, how does this come together? And for us, that's part of the Project Data Analytics Coalition. So we only formed at the start of the year, still very much forming. What we have done is we said what our vision is, what do we want to do as a coalition and a group of companies, and we put together some principles. They're on the screen there. Some of the key things are that we collaborate, and actually that when we come up with solutions, we share things like the coding and the source data, so that, you know, if in UU we develop a problem on how we do a solution to how we do supply chain reporting in mass data, that actually we develop that, we test that in our organisation, and then I share that coding and that solution with my partners within the coalition so that they can do it. And likewise, I will get the benefits from other coalition members. So a couple of pieces of vision. What we want to do is we want to try and move this forward and move it forward at pace, and particularly kind of build that better understanding within our organisations, do that at a faster pace as a collective, and deliver benefits to our organisations as well. My prediction is that we'll be able to really leapfrog in this topic area by working as part of this coalition. So who's involved? A couple of the companies there that have come together. So MOD, they have invested a lot within their apprentices and got a large number on the Project Data Analytics Apprenticeship scheme. Rolls-Royce, Sellafield, UU, EDF. Hitachi and Tails have just been organisations that have joined us recently. So I say, as a collective, we have we're coming together, and we also have people on the apprenticeship schemes who are a little bit our pioneers on this, and who are learning the skills that are bringing back into our organisation. I think this really slide, what's in it for me? I mean, why did you join? I think this is really about the direction of travel where certainly for PMOs are going. And I want to be able to make sure that we're part of that, and we're getting ready for those skills of the future. But to be able to do that, I want to try it out and see what it's like. So we've got a couple of our colleagues on the apprenticeship scheme. We're just starting to understand what are the problem statements that we could solve using this. But I am already seeing the benefits of being part of that coalition and learning from other members of that, and those who've already a little bit further. So EDF are a little bit more mature, and they've shared their learning and what they've been doing so far. Rolls-Royce likewise. So I'm learning a lot from them. But also, and it's making me go faster. And I think the takeaway for me is I can see it being the future change, and I need to be part of that.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we hand over to Martin?
We've counted through, but really just to encourage people, we're trying to just show you where this is coming from and the picture of how do we start as a coalition to kind of go, okay, we want to make a difference, we want to bring it together and work together. And this part of this webinar is really to show you how we're going to do that and talk through the logic a little bit of starting by reimagining, starting to then say, well, okay, what are those roadmaps? How do we then turn them into problem statements? So I guess my job has been to set up and hand over to yourselves on the how we do that.
Okay, superb. Thank you so much, Katherine. So that's a great overview about what this coalition is trying to achieve. So just to recap, so the task force was there to set the policy and the framework for it, so the coalition is making it happen. So it's got a lot of skin in the game. It's part of Katherine's job, for instance, is to make this happen inside of United Utilities. So in terms of coalition, we've got other people whose job it is to make sure that this happens. So in terms of the construct of the coalition, so we've got a steering group. So the steering group have got members from those organisations that Katherine shared with you before, and they're there to basically shape where we go and what we're trying to achieve and what the priorities are. Underneath that, we've got the architecture and the roadmaps group, and that is there to make sure we've got a set of standards in place. So if we create things, it's all scalable, it's all done to open standards, etc. And it's done with an architectural approach where we can start to glue things together. So if we don't have that, we'll finish up things where we have just a bag of bits, basically, that we can't glue together. So the principle of Lego is they all fit together through blocks, and you can go and create other things out of it. So underneath the architecture and the roadmaps group are these product groups. So we're calling them product groups because if you think about risk management, for instance, at a functional level, so that is a functional discipline as part of project delivery, what can we do with risk management to take it to the next generation? So it needs a group of people who are risk management professionals, plus other people as well, who start to reimagine that and start to guide us through that journey to take us from where we are now to where we need to be in the future through different pathways. So that's what we're trying to do. Next slide, please, Anne. So in terms of the build-up about this, right, so I'll just take you through these 6 points here. So it's to set the overall approach, which we've now got, and then we go through a problem decomposition. So with risk management, we don't do risk management because the book tells us to do it. That's not why we should be doing it. We should be doing it to minimize the downside and to maximize the upside. If we're doing that, we probably finish up with a different problem definition to what we've got today. So we can answer that problem in a different way. So bullet number 3 is now saying, if we decompose that problem and we just keep breaking it down and breaking it down into its constituent parts, we can then get to a situation where we can solve those constituent parts through some of these projects we've been talking about. So those projects could be jigsaw pieces or Lego blocks as part of an overall jigsaw lid. So that's number 4. So I'll talk about that in a bit more detail shortly. And then number 5, what it does, it takes each of those jigsaw pieces one by one, breaks it down into some problem statements. So if you've been to a hackathon, you might work on one of those problem statements and then you work up a Lego piece, right? So that would be the thing in number 6. So we then start to get all these Lego pieces and we can join them all together. So these modules of capability. And next slide, please, Anne. So in terms of what we do then, we take those 6 pieces together, because that's now sort of architectured it, it's engineered it, it's just making sure we've got a systematic approach that all joins together. And what we'd like you to do then is to pick those jigsaw pieces up and start to adopt them and start to apply them. So you can adapt them as well for your organizations. You put some bells and whistles on them and feed that back as well, because we're going to be putting this into GitHub libraries and things like that. So it's about sharing your learning as well. So through these webinars as well, we'd like people to be sharing their learning about what works, what doesn't work, what helps you go faster. So this is all about making the boat go faster. If you've found that there's something missing, we can feed that back into the overall jigsaw lid and this project brain concept so we can solve it. So we can solve it together. Underpinning all of this is this community approach. So it's combining our resources so we move a lot quicker if we're working together than working alone. Next slide, please, Anne. So in terms of inspiring this, so back to Catherine's point, this is not just about faster horses, right? We've got to start to reimagine the way we work. What we're not trying to do is just apply automation to get rid of people's jobs, right? That's not what the opportunity is here. It's the opportunity to start to reimagine the way we work. So if you've been involved in things like risk management, for instance, so my view is risk management is the sort of process of guessing what's going to go wrong. We shouldn't be doing that in 2024. We can use all this data to start to get some insights, so we can reimagine the way we do it. So if you go back to the Project Data Analytics Manifesto, which is now part of that government policy as well that Katherine put up. So look at the data and analytics strategy from the Infrastructure Projects Authority. So one of the principles in there is about busting some of these myths of project management. So why do we do risk management? Sort of risk management as it's known today. So we can now start to reimagine it. We can start to think, what are the jigsaw pieces to take us to this new future? So if we start to think about, what the lead indicators associated with risk. So what can we do to augment our decision making so we can make those interventions a lot earlier? And risk is only one source of variance. We've got all these other sources of variance that tend to be siloed because that's the way we did it back in the 1980s. We can now start to reimagine it. We can get a different way of doing it. So these books just help to set the context. So we're not going to have a book on everything, but it just shows you is by working together, we can start to inspire each other and start to go a lot further, a lot faster. Next slide, please. So what we're trying to do is to map this against 3 horizons. Now, these aren't linear, right? You don't go from 1 to 2 to 3. It doesn't work like that. So what we're saying is, in terms of 1, that's taking what we've got today and just polishing it. Just making it a little bit better. In terms of number 2, it's taking what we've got today, enhancing it with some new approaches maybe. And then number 3 is totally reimagining it. So if we start to reimagine things, it might be a different construct for your organization. And what Project Data Analytics does then, it starts to facilitate that transformational change. So what they do, those horizons, they frame your level of ambition. So within your organization, do you want to be taking risk register, for instance, and just, getting better visualizations, or do you want to be moving towards variance analytics? What's your level of ambition? And that's going to be different per organization based around what your constraints are, what your priorities are, the amount of bandwidth you've got to do this, etc. Next slide, please, Anne. So what we've got here is a jigsaw lid. So these jigsaw lids have been created over the past 18 months or so. We've been working with the community on them. They've evolved. We did some work with Sellafield on it. So they've evolved and evolved and evolved. So these are all the jigsaw pieces. We're going to open source all of it. It's all available. So we'll open source it and we'll say, let's pick some jigsaw pieces off and start to solve it. So we can solve it through an apprenticeship project. So the one bottom left there is improved visuals and reports. So I know there's a lot of people who's working inside of their organizations to get better risk dashboards and things like that, right? So rather than we're doing that 100 times across 100 organizations, let's just do it once. And then once you've got that, you can take that back and it makes the current process today a little bit better. So what some organizations will want to do, top right, we've got generative scenario development in there, which says, so based around all these possible futures, what does it mean for the outturn of the project? And what could that variance look like as a consequence of all these things happening? So we can then start to run all these scenarios on it, thousands of scenarios, and then look at the distribution of those scenarios and work out which one is the most likely, which one you start to sort of put your bets against. So there's so much we can do together in this space, both through the apprenticeship projects. So with apprenticeship projects as well, each person in the apprenticeship needs to do 3 projects as part of the course. So just imagine we're picking off parts of these jigsaw pieces, and one person might build on the back of the last person's, etc., etc. We just go so much faster as a free byproduct of a free course. On top of that, we've got the hackathons where we bring the community together. We've also talked to universities who's got masters and PhD students who can work on these as well. And we put innovation proposals together with those universities, working with some of the sponsors so we can then go even faster. So this is a virtuous cycle. It just gets better and better and better. Next slide, please. So what we do, we break this down. So this is a definition of one of those jigsaw pieces. It starts to get some specification around it. So this frames the challenge that one of the apprentices or the hackathon is going to go after. And then that turns into that challenge deck that we get at the hackathon, for instance. Next slide, please. So just to recap, we take the jigsaw lid, we take the ambition, so that ambition can be set by one of these product groups. We can write a book, we can do what we want to say. This is how far we can push it. We then break that down into some pieces to get us there. So that then breaks down the left-hand side of that slide. It now says this is the definition of each of those Lego pieces. So the right-hand side is, so what does this mean for personas, right? For the people doing the job, what does it mean? So we can now start to map that out as well, because we'll now need training programs, because it's going to be a different future for some of those roles. And that needs fleshing out, right? It's going to change your capability mapping in your skills frameworks and all that sort of stuff. So rather than doing that inside of your organization, we can do it all together and go a lot faster. Next slide, please.
This is over to me.
So it's over to you now, Ant.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think where we've got to so far is you can see the vision from companies like Katherine, United Utilities and other members of the coalition to they've got these shared challenges, and as they've alluded to, 10 companies, 10 challenges they all share, but they can't all solve all 10, but everyone can solve one, for example, through their apprentices and the right upskilling. And then Martin's taken it from the side of these are all in each area that we have assurance or risk management there too, he's spoken about, and he's broken down these jigsaw lids. Now, they're not necessarily complete, because you could have other problems which we haven't thought of which you could add to them. So contributing to the jigsaw lids is a great way to help us as well, because what I'll be taking you through soon is exactly how we're connecting them together, so that we have practical workflows to address these in the most efficient and quickest way possible. So starting with of course, all of these solutions, we have to get the architecture right, because they have to be interoperable to really get that compound effect going forwards. So we're currently in the process of putting together the rules, which will be in the next week or so. And these will be your reference data models, your different business models, and they'll be open so that everybody can translate from their practices in their work to the central shared models. I think the classic example from my last role was the UK population data was 55 to 64, 65 to 74, 75 to 84, and the French were 60 to 69, 70 to 79, etc. So they were always 50% out. So when we were combining the data, we obviously had the model, so we could all translate the French data and the British data to the standard data, so we could get the power of our deterministic modeling across both data sets, not just English, not just British and French, but more countries combined once we set that up. And that was with COVID data. So this architecture group, so right now we're setting out the standards, and then separately, although related to it, there's 3 product groups which will be addressing from the coalition the 3 areas, which Martin, I've forgotten which 3 the areas are. What are they, the 3 areas we're looking at?
Risk, assurance,
yeah,
and scheduling.
Yeah. So we don't just have Jigsaw Lids for these 3, we've got Jigsaw Lids for everybody. So they'll be setting it out for those 3, and they'll be help guiding what the needs are. Now, of course, let's say there's a need where they may have to pool their data in order to solve it. So we're also setting the architecture so that can be done securely. Now, probably most solutions won't require any data pooling, but some will. It really depends. And when with this architecture, when they've built a solution, let's say an apprentice has a problem, an apprentice at United Utilities has a problem at work, and then through the coalition project, through the apprenticeship project that they do, they're addressing that problem. And but they only get so far through, because we might have to break these down even more to more manageable chunks. They only get so far through. Now, you might have another apprentice, or EDF might have another apprentice who's going to want and come and build upon the previous work, leverage any existing analysis, code, or solutions. So that's, again, why we're going to have all these standardized protocols. Okay, and of course, enable us to measure the impact across the industry. So I slightly bit off a bit of this slide before I'd come to digest it. Yes, so these product groups, they're the big long-term strategy. They're worrying about how do we line this up so we eat, that must be Martin's phrase, eat the elephant. So the way they're positioned now is not necessarily in the Jigsaw Lids, is, as you can see, it's done by aspirational to evolutionary, etc., experimental to incremental. But that's not necessarily the natural workflow. The natural workflow for some of these might be quite jumping around a lot, and that's where the coalition will be strategizing that. So it's like it says here, you would never build a jigsaw puzzle by just laying down random pieces. Effectively, the coalition for each product group is finding the corner pieces and the edge pieces and putting them down first. So stage 1 of this is where many people get stuck, is what even is, like, what is a question? What am I building a solution for? Where do I start? So we're quite practiced at helping apprentices start to learn to break down their problems at work and create effectively challenge statements. So many people will be familiar with our hackathons, and we think that's a really great way for apprentices, or anyone actually, to come along and learn about all the different approaches people have to solving these problems and really sort of practice it in a risk-free environment, but also a really fun environment as well. And so as we break these problems down, they will form the foundation of apprentice projects. They'll form the foundation of hacks, but also you could have people in the office who aren't on the apprenticeships. They can still contribute. This will be completely open source. And so if you're not on the apprenticeships, that's not for you for whatever reason, company policy, it doesn't mean you can't contribute to contribute a Jigsaw piece and get some benefit from this too, because there's a templated design, as we've said before, and I keep reiterating. And all the solutions are going to go onto the solution center, so everyone's going to get the benefit, and we're going to be introducing more material so you can learn how to use them. And of course, these core pieces, these core workflows that we'll be developing, they are really the core pieces of work, not the little twig ends. So if you've got a twig end, you don't have to, you're not starting from scratch once this moves forward, because you'll be standing on the shoulders of giants who've previously been building this up. So yeah, this is a manifesto principle. We collaborate on open source data analytics solutions, tackling priority challenges. So why do we perform risk management? I think, to me, risk management, as a data person coming in, someone trying to explain the way risk management works, it doesn't make sense. So I asked someone in my previous role, so what, this risk is 25% for this life of this project. So on similar projects, it fails one time in 4? No. All right, how often does it fail? Oh, it's never failed. So you're trying to explain to a layman, so how is it 25% risk? And that's just one simple example. So we are not wedded to improving existing processes. We are wedded to solving the problems, not improving existing processes. Now, it doesn't mean you can't improve existing processes, but that's not the core focus here. So it's like we said, use case, this could evolve. So we're going to develop the core paths, and I think most people will be familiar with graph networks, about how things connect together. And you can imagine this representing the core path of the problems down the middle, and at each stage it enables different edge solutions to be developed. And this logic puzzle of project delivery we formed is part of the project brain. So this means that not just are we building systemically through the core challenges, allowing people to build off their twig ends at the same time, but it's also documented in such a way using a graph structure, so that we can also put a Marvin chatbot on top. So you can free text question the solutions as they're gone. So if you have a problem and you use Marvin, you can put your question into Marvin and it will be able to return you the existing solutions. We're also going to have the solutions mapped so that from the Jigsaw Lids, so that if one's been solved, it's going to go green, and if one's not had any work done, it'll be red, or I don't know what the color scheme will be. And if one's got some progress, it'll be amber. So one would be able to know, one will be able to see from a top-down view on the one side of a Jigsaw Lid, I've got this problem, it's been solved, it's not been solved, okay. Or they'll also be able to just query the brain using Marvin to find out what there is. And the brain obviously doesn't just have all of the solutions, it's also got a lot of proprietary material from books, the practice framework, and more. Yeah, and once you've got your solutions and you link them back to the solution center with all your specific user stories, we can really start to see the ROI building up. Martin, can you do the next 2 slides? Because you do them better than me.
Certainly am. So what we're trying to do here, so this is about this problem decomposition. It's to break risk management down into its constituent parts, right? So it's not what the book tells us. If we think about risk management, minimizing the downside and maximize the upside, what are those problems that we're trying to solve? So we take that through the user stories, right? So what we then do is say, so we've now got a decomposition of that problem through all of these user stories that need to be solved at a persona level, right? So we're very, very precise about it. So what we can then do is get a solution which solves that user story. But that solution does not exist in isolation. It needs some data to feed into it. And that solution has got 2 parts to it. So the first part of the solution is to pick the data up in the first place. So is that going to be an app? Is it going to be something that rips the data out of an invoice or an inbox or something like that? So that's the first side of the solution. The second side of the solution is to say, now we've got the data, let's get some insights out of it. So that's what we need to do. But our solution, it comes with some metadata, right? It needs some data that is specified so you can feed into that solution in a systematic way so you can answer the user story. So that's what we're trying to do through it. So what we're trying to do as well is to work out, so what's the cost of creating those solutions and fixing the data versus the benefit of solving the use case. So as a coalition, we can now start to do a cost benefit analysis about where to put our collective resources and our collective investment. So that's what we're trying to do in essence through the concept of Project Brain. Next slide, please, Anne. So
Sorry,
just imagine.
There we go.
So just imagine we've turned it all green, right? So we've turned it all green. All this data is flowing through all of these solutions, job done. Well, it's not job done because it's solved, but it's not optimized. So what we're trying to do then is to get all these solutions to sing. So they all need to be integrated together. We need to optimize and optimize to get the best flow coming out of it. And that's where, you know, if you're working for a consultancy, if you're really good at that, that's where you learn your money, because it's going to be the optimization of this overall system. So it's not saying that there's no jobs for consultants out there, because there will be, because these solutions, you can pick them up, adapt them, integrate together, help organizations to really get this flying. So I think it's a system problem that we can solve collectively, with some people getting into the top end stuff as well. So back to you, Anne.
Cool. Yeah, and we're already seeing the power of collaboration in other areas as well. So this isn't new as much as it's just being moved from other areas into this domain, I suppose. Yeah, and this, like Martin says, once it starts to go green, there's actually quite a lot I can do from the sort of AI auto monitoring of the solution center once it does hit a critical mass. So different things like it doesn't really matter what the specifics are, but we can look at if there's competing solutions, we can measure their performance, etc. So once we have so the brain already exists, but you know, once the solutions are going into it, it's just going to scale so fast. So the product groups, we mentioned them before. So each product group, actually, that's jumping ahead. So yeah, so there's 3 product groups currently, and that, like we said, they're responsible for decomposing the problems in a systematic way, and they're also responsible for curating challenge statements for like for the hackathons. And so even the hackathons, when they're solving problems, they'll be advancing forwards, as well as obviously helping with data, etc. Now, they are the domain expertise in this area who lead that side. And they also ensure that we've got compliance with order principles and requirements. Yeah, I think I say they're matching the demand. So what are they delivering? They own the function of their specific Jigsaw lid. So the risk management product group owns the risk management Jigsaw lid. They own the problem specifications within that. Now, of course, it won't all be attacked at the same time. They'll prioritize the list, and then certain of those problem statements will be a lot more detailed than others. And so they're also owning the core path backlog, or with advice from outside, because there are some other things to consider for that. And quite important, the data needed. So what they're really doing is they're shaping the problems, which enables us to solve and make the solutions. And making sure, again, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and they're the ones. It's the industry setting the balance between refine and reimagine. So it's industry-led, industry needs. So this is a schedule stability challenge from the past. I think this was the last hack, and so it's the same questions that anyone who's looking at a schedule has. How stable is my schedule? Where is instability? What are the driving factors that are causing it? Understanding, so can I understand the performance of my schedule, and can it be difficult and time consuming? And currently there's not really that many measures used to understand performance. There's key milestone slippage, for example, and there's an argument these can be easily manipulated. Now, some for good reasons. So you can change your base delivery date because you've got something from outside of your control. But when we looked at the data for this, I think we found 48% of all of the base delivery dates were changed. So that's almost half. If anyone's interested, as a slight segue, there will be that we did a model hack internally in Projecting Success of how we would go about a hack. And so we did it on this particular challenge and we've built a solution to it, and we're going to open source that as well. And that's going to go in Solution Center. But for anyone who's interested in learning how to do a hack, this will be a sort of learn along type thing. So you can see what we did, how we decomposed the problem, when we had issues with data, what steps we took, stuff like this. So it's pretty clear. So when you've got a problem like this, the pain points are pretty obvious. You want to know, you just want to be able to know if between two schedule files or snapshots, how stable it is. And you want to see it quickly, and preferably you want to know in advance of there being any problems. So you want to know if any activity durations are being changed between schedule updates and many more of these things. So that you see it's broken down there into specific pain points, which any solution must address. And that can be quite broad, right? So now this challenge is a hack challenge, so it's not an apprentice project, so it is a bit broader. But a solution may not address all the pain points. It may just address one. But as long as all of the solutions addressing one bit of it are following the same standards, they can work together, then eventually we have a solution to the whole problem. So I believe this example was by a Rolls-Royce apprentice, I think. Oh yeah, it is, it says there. And so they used the DCMA 14-point assessment, and they've built I actually use this as well in Rolls-Royce now. This has come from an apprenticeship project. And so they built this schedule quality tool that expands on the scope to include schedule stability. And it's very impressive. So I think it's a great example of what an apprentice project based on a Jigsaw Lid could be. And so to be clear, the Rolls-Royce, how the Jigsaw Lids are working, the Rolls-Royce projects, they're sequential. First, they addressed how good is our schedule data in a previous hack. So they could know if the data quality was good enough. And now they are, how stable is my schedule? So it's, if we know this data is of a certain quality, then we can trust the schedule stability data. But if we know it's not, then we already know where one of the problems might be. So the first phase of the product groups, and there will be more in future because obviously there's a lot more work to do. Scheduling is being led by Rolls-Royce, probably because they've already sort of been making a start on scheduling, and then making all of their solutions open to everyone. And risk management will be led by EDF, I believe. Dave Turnbull, perhaps, or no, I can't remember who it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Assurance by MOD, and there's a mystery fourth portfolio management potential product group that is a bit of a Schrodinger's product group at the minute. And
it's fair to say, isn't it, Martin? We had a bit of discussion about what were the three groups that we go. So we just picked three areas that were important to us as a coalition, and where we feel, we have challenges within our own organisations, or opportunities, should we call it that, about how we might reimagine this. So they were the first three that we picked. Like Ant says, you can absolutely pick more topics, and we will, as we unlock these, we'll bring more in. So that was the three that were important to us as a coalition, and I think if you're a different organisation, you might have others, but that's how we landed on that list.
And this is where the stewardship and the curation comes in on our side from Projecting Success as well, because many of the component parts, as we're decomposing these problems, aren't unique to assurance, risk management, or scheduling. There'll be elements of solutions which will be able to be cross-pollinated and used and incorporated. So that's, again, everyone is making everybody else march faster, which just makes me all happy. Because these product groups, as we said, they provide the backlog and they'll provide the ROI. So again, to just reiterate, burden, shared the burden as appropriately and fairly as possible. Completely industry-led in terms of feedback and productionization of future increments. Learnings are all shared from pilots, including soft factors such as adoption, the pooling of the insights, and also it's just such a good way to demonstrate collaborative working across the supply chain. So if you want to get involved, remember the priority. Actually, maybe Martin, if it's for getting involved, maybe that's more your wheelhouse.
So, Katherine, is this something that you want to pick up, actually? Because from our perspective, we've got to get momentum going, right? So if you have too many people, if you have a meeting with 1,000 people in it, we'll never get any progress, right? So we need to get the wheel turning a little bit first and just pipe clean this process end to end so we can now start to get it going. So I think, so what the coalition have said is let's keep the product groups a bit constrained in terms of membership at the moment. But if you want to come along to the hackathons and get involved in solving the solutions, you want to get involved with the apprenticeship projects, then it's open to everybody. But in terms of the product groups and stuff, we're just trying to constrain them a little bit, just for a few months until we get traction. So, Katherine, have you got anything to add to that?
That's it. Really keen. So I think I said at the beginning, every time I kind of dip my toe into our conversations, I learn a little bit more. But it can also feel so big and inspirational and visionary and all that kind of stuff. But I'm also a real practical person. So where do we start? And that's what I've been challenging us as a coalition. Let's just eat the elephant a little bit. Let's pick 3 topics and go for it. And let's really reimagine a couple of those topics and bring some great solutions that have a brilliant business case behind it, that show how that has realistic capacity, has taken us up a value chain, etc. But let's not try and do everything at once. Let's go after a couple of key topics that are important to our organisations, hence why we picked risk assurance and scheduling. But do you know what? And I know in the presentation we've given here today, and I encourage you probably to all go back and watch the video again, or even get a copy of the slides, because there's a lot to read and digest in here. We're trying to give you the 60,000 foot view, and then also, you know, break it down into some elements of what we'll do. And if you're like me, coming it to the first time, you're like, well, show me an example, show me a Pacific. And Ant has given a couple of small Pacifics. Check back with us in 6, 9, 12 months' time. Those small examples will have grown into something even bigger and mightier, and to that right-hand side of reimagining. So that's just really the encouragement. I do encourage you to. I asked this question of Martin 9 months ago. Where do I start, Martin? His answer to me was, just get involved. Just get involved. Get some people on the apprenticeship. Get them to the hackathon, and to start to see the art of the possible, and connect people with this and help them understand what we're doing. So that's what we've been trying a little bit to do today, isn't it, Martin? To show that story and to show how we're approaching it. It is exciting. There is a lot to take in. As I do encourage you to go back and look through this and ask some more questions of Martin and Ant. They have got so much excitement, so much knowledge on how to do this. We as a coalition don't know all the answers yet, but let's come together and work through that.
Superb. Thank you so much, Katherine.
If there's one takeaway from today, I hope people can see that from the top strategic vision of these companies, how it goes down through the layers, down to actually quite small and specific tasks, even solutions that are not output of themselves. It could be a solution that's supportive of other solutions, for example, and because there may be no direct ROI individually on that small supportive solution, but if it supports another 10 solutions, well, that's brilliant. Sorry, Martin.
It could be a snippet of code, right? It could be a code that helps you to clean some data up. Everyone's struggling with the same problem. We solve it once so everyone can access it. So if you've got any questions, please stick them in the chat. Or if you'd like to come off mute as well, I don't know if Irene can open it up, but if you want to come off mute and ask any questions. So we'll give it another 5 minutes, see if anybody's got any questions for us.
Christoph has a question.
Christoph, go for it.
Happy for anyone else to take over instead. But so there's a lot we've got and hearing that the coalition are sort of leading this. Apprentices are solving little problems during their apprenticeship, which addresses a jigsaw piece or end use case or challenge or problem or pain point or stuck, whatever you want to call it, to give them their own ROI. it could be seen as do nothing until the coalition lead this. But there's a lot of organisations who are on this call at the moment. And if they can see this and see the jigsaw lids with the various pieces and have got their own challenge, end use case, whatever, what's the best way they can take this forward and say, I don't want to wait for 6 months, 9 months, as Katherine's saying, but actually, A, I want to get involved, but B, we've got our own little thing and we need help to get it sorted with some of the stuff that Ant was talking about.
Definitely ping me an email for now. Very shortly, there's going to be I'm not sure where it's going to be, but a sort of a Jigsaw Lid website where you can see all this stuff directly. But for now, if you've got if you think, oh, I've got problems which align with some of these, and I'd like to get some of the benefits and contribute or whatever, then yeah, just ping me an email, I'll put it in the chat.
So it's back to Katherine's point as well, I think. So Katherine said, just get involved. This is not about solutions, right? This is not about these Lego pieces, because you can have all the Lego pieces in the world, but if you haven't got people who can implement it, if you haven't got the right data model, if you haven't got your supply chain on board, it's a system problem, right? This is not a technology problem. Please don't see it as just throw a load of tech and the problem will go away. It will not, right? You need to take people on journeys. This is going to fundamentally change some roles as well for some people. And if you're involved in big change projects, you know that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of resource to do it. So you've got to take people on the journey. So the sooner you can get involved in it, you can start to shape that journey and you learn off others because they're probably a few steps in front of you. So don't just sit back and think, oh, I'll come back in 4 years' time and this will all be fixed, because you'll be in Betamax world. So I think
Can I be a bit bold as well on that, Martin? So as a coalition, we if this is something that really interests you, we'd really welcome a conversation for you to come and join us. But what we need is the contribution and we need the input, because it'll only work if we're all contributing to it. So putting people into those product groups and actually driving the challenges, nominating people for apprenticeships, sending people to the hacks. It's not a watching sport. You've actually got to kind of step out, and it's a little bit stepping out without quite knowing where it's going. And I feel that sometimes, where's this going to go? But I've kind of just, stepping out on behalf of you, because I think I can see the potential and I'm going to contribute to that and help do something different for us.
Well, I think we should be going where you want us to go, Katherine. Isn't that we're sort of enabling you to go where you want to go, I think is the way I see it. Because I don't know where to go. I'm not a domain expert.
Absolutely. But I guess my message is it's not a watching sport. If you're in the coalition, we really want to make a change here. So it's about, if you're going to come and join, can you bring some of your kind of energy and time and commitment to help make it happen?
Brilliant. So it's about horsepower. So this is not linear, right? We can't say in 4 years' time we're going to be doing this, because this tech is moving so quickly, right? ChatGPT 5 is going to be out, Claude's getting a new version, Microsoft keep changing. This is evolving as we're playing with it. So we can all learn together. Everybody can't learn everything about everything, right? You can't learn about ChatGPT and all the Microsoft stack and this, that, and the other, but we can as a community, right? We can have experts in different areas, all share that knowledge and all start to build off each other. It's the nice thing about the hackathons as well. When you come along, you find some other experts who's trying to solve the problem that you're trying to do, but they're probably 4 or 5 chapters in the book in front of you, and they can really help you out. And those relationships endure, right? You can contact them afterwards and you'll have their phone number and your email and stuff. So it's about joining people together, forging connections, going faster together than alone. And that's the cool thing about it. Plus as well, for the big clients, this starts to attract the supply chain, right? The supply chain now think, right, if my client's going, I need to jump on this bus as well. So it then starts to become a bit infectious and we start to get going faster and faster, all right? So it's a flywheel. We're trying to spin up the flywheel, but it takes energy. So people have got to put skin in the game. That's the thing.
On that note, Martin, it's Marcus from Thales. We've currently got a whole bunch of data-orientated apprentices through other providers, effectively. And whilst we work on getting PMO-specific data analytic apprentices, how can we engage our current apprentice cohorts? I mean, obviously, I can send 6 or 8 of them to the hack, that would be a really good start. And does that do enough to get the ball rolling and start the flywheel spinning?
So it's all a start, right? So I think it's about curating these challenges, and it depends on the apprenticeship, right? So the apprenticeship, some of them just do the generic sort of syllabus, whereas what we're trying to do through the Project Data Analytics Apprenticeship is to pose the problems associated with Project Data Analytics, and we'll weave that all the way through the apprenticeship scheme, right?
Yeah.
But everyone is welcome to join this party. So what they can do, they can pick off some of these jigsaw pieces and then start to solve them. They can come along to the hackathons. I think what they get the extra from being an apprentice through the Project Data Analytics Apprenticeship is we pay the tutors to go and nursemaid them through all of that and support them and to help them and to coach them, etc. So it's getting all that sort of support, that technical support and that back office support. Obviously, as a business, I can't do that for apprentices that aren't through Projected Success because I just go belly up if I did that all the time. So
Yeah,
I'm very happy to do all the open source stuff, etc. But I can't go and support other people's apprentices.
No, that makes sense. Because they will have their own support, but very much focused on pure data as opposed to data in the PMO world. But I think certainly from a how a Thales lean-in perspective, we'll try and start down that route whilst we work out the best route to get PMO apprentices onto the PDA apprenticeship,
Cool.
and push that way.
Brilliant.
Really
Any
good,
questions
really
for
good
anybody?
session.
Yeah, pleasure. Any more? So, Katherine, would you like to wrap up?
It's really just to say thank everyone for listening today. Hope that you learned a little bit more and been a little bit inspired about what the future might bring. And I encourage you again to check in with us in 9 months' time. Let's see where we've got to. Let's check in again in 18 months' time, see where we've got to there, because I think we'll be moving quite fast in this space. But thanks for your time, everyone.